I'm lucky today. We've got Julie is here with us as well, and she's going to try to help us out in managing the chat. And but hopefully, the information we're going to share will keep everybody in the loop. So I'll just share my screen with you, and we can get off and going. So the information we've got here today is current as of the 23rd of January. So it's a fairly evolving situation, but it looks like we're pretty good over the last 5 days. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm hosting this virtual assembly from the lands of the Gadigal people. I acknowledge ongoing custodians of the various lands on which you are all calling in from today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in the assembly and throughout our school community. So it's been a fairly big week here, as you might appreciate. The RAT approach only really came our way earlier on Monday. Julie had a fair range of plans that had to be changed, reinvented, and then refined again, even up until today. And Julie and I are here, but most of our staff are off site as we're trying to keep people away from each other as much as possible ahead of the return to school. So what we're hoping to be doing today is we're going to be talking about COVID smart measures at school, the testing, what to do if people are COVID positive, vaccinations, ventilation and masks, much of which is the same as we have seen before. We've also got some guidelines around visitors and activities. And then there's some information about learning from home type approaches, which we are hoping, of course, is not going to be necessary here at Thornley West. And there'll be an opportunity, if there's any questions that come through the chat that might be consistent, we might be able to address those at the end. So basically, the health department has been working really closely with education to come up with a plan to keep schools open in 2022. And there's no discussion that I've heard that has any indication of wholesale school closures. And that's really the whole point. We're building on the learning from the last couple of years and to make sure that we can maintain continuity of learning on site wherever as possible. But we do recognise that we do need to have several layers of protection for our staff, for our students, and for the wider community to just make sure that everybody's safe. And this is the guidance that's been passed on to us. So not a normal start to the year, not the year that we had planned, probably not the year that you had planned. However, I'm very confident that the plans we've got will get our kids into school on Tuesday. The kids will have a great start to the year, and we'll have a great start to the year as well. So we've got every confidence in it, but we also recognise that while the students, teachers are the most important educational contact they have, they are surrounded by a whole network of educators. We've got a whole system around us that will support learning throughout not just Thornley West Public School, but throughout the state. And there may have to be some degrees of flexibility, and your kids may come in contact with more teachers than they would normally, depending on how the staffing situation evolves. So where we're up to so far is those rapid antigen tests have been distributed to our community. We did some of those yesterday, and we did a whole bundle of those today. And there's a very, very small number left to go out. And we've sent out the first fortnight's worth, which is just great. And the recommendation is that children are tested twice a week. And the original idea was Monday and Wednesday morning would be a really great way to do that. And that will make sure that we're doing some surveillance testing to know what's happening in our community. Our staff are working on the same sort of protocol as well. And, that's all about keeping each other safe and happy and healthy. It is worth noting, though, that the use of the rapid antigen tests, it's certainly recommended, but it's not a mandatory requirement. School is open for everybody nonetheless, but we would encourage it. So if that could be done twice a week on the school days before attending school, that would be fantastic. If you're one of those families that perhaps hasn't managed to get hold of a test, give the office a call, and they'll be able to make an arrangement for you. The instructions were fairly straightforward, and there was also some links in the communication I sent out earlier on this week that you can click on, and that will take you straight through the instructions if you happen to lose the bits of paper that go along with it. And this video that we're looking at now we'll put this on our school website this afternoon, so you can actually follow these links through if that's what you'd like to do later on. For staff working in our support classes and for our support unit students, we've sent home 10 days worth of testing. We recognise that it's more appropriate to have a more frequent testing sort of process. So there's that opportunity there for you. And there was some conversation that was going around the department yesterday that in the future, it may be that the students in our support classes will end up with some sort of saliva swabs rather than a nasal swab. But because of the stock situations at the moment, we ultimately get what's delivered. But we are hoping that that's going to happen. So if your child has got even a mild COVID symptoms, please get them tested with a rapid antigen test or with a PCR, whatever you need to do. They need to isolate until they get a negative test result in line with health protocols. And I guess that message hasn't greatly changed since last year. So in other words, if kids are sick, they need to be home, and we've passed the same message on to the staff here at school. If you're unwell, you need to stay home. Even if you don't have COVID, you should still stay home if you're sick. And school is all about coming in here and working hard when you're fit and healthy. Obviously, you need to isolate until you get a negative test result. But if the symptoms continue, stay at home, administer another rat 24 hours later. And if for some reason that's an issue, give us a call. We have ample supplies here and we can support our community. If the second rat is negative or another diagnosis is confirmed, such as hay fever, they can return to school. But obviously, if the child is unwell, then they would stay at home. We don't need to know about negative surveillance testing. So that doesn't get reported to us or to Service New South Wales. But if there is a positive result, that would need to be entered onto the Service New South Wales app and then let us know as a school, because we need to keep track of who's in and who's out for what reasons, and to monitor the return to school planning. And obviously, the sooner we know, the better. That helps with our planning just enormously. So when you come back COVID-19 positive, let's hope this doesn't happen, but let's just say it does. So under those new rules, the Department of Education is no longer involved in contact tracing. So last year, you'll recall, if there was a case in a particular class, we'd be furiously running around trying to find out where had that class been, who they crossed paths with, and that could potentially put a large number of students out of school. This year, that won't happen. It's sort of a private issue and something that's managed according to the health guidelines. Those results get registered. Only positive results get registered. And once your child has a positive result, they do need to isolate for those 7 days. My job will be to advise the community, but it will be in a fairly general sense. So it might just be that I send a letter home or a push notification out, which says there's been a case in stage 1 at your school, please monitor for symptoms. But all the other kids still come to school just as normal, and we use the rat kits to do some surveillance testing, as we would do anyway. In New South Wales, positive cases are provided a medical notice after 7 days. And of course, what triggers that is the Service New South Wales notification. So if you're positive, you go onto your app, you say, my child's COVID positive. Health will make contact with you at the end of that 7-day period following a negative test. A clearance is issued. Once that clearance is issued, it's recommended that people take a break from testing for 28 days. So even though you might have a whole bundle of these rat kits at home, we're not real sure if that would be a false positive or etc. So after you get the clearance, return to school, provided you've got no more symptoms and you're fit and healthy, but you wouldn't be recommending using those kits for 28 days. And that applies to us as staff as well as the students. And then after 28 days, or around 5 weeks after recovery, surveillance testing can recommence. Okay, so in terms of vaccinations, all school staff are vaccinated, and we're required at the moment to have our booster shots as well. So that process is happening. We really strongly recommend that all eligible students aged 5 years and over and their families get vaccinated. And it would be my view that we're all watching the vaccination rates fairly closely, and the trigger to return school operations to more like they have been in the past with visitors on sites will be largely linked to the vaccination rates in our communities. So that's really important for us. And of course, at the moment, most of the planning we're talking about isn't about protecting the staff at school. We're all adults and we're all triple vaccinated pretty much by now, but it is about protecting the children, and that's the important part. Okay, so ventilation isn't greatly different to last year. The department has done a fairly extensive audit of all ventilation in all spaces across the school. We have measures in place to make sure that we're maximising airflow. We're utilising outdoor spaces where appropriate, and the department in schools where they don't have, they have spaces where ventilation can't be promoted. There have been some air purification devices sent out. So that's fairly well managed in line with the term 4 sort of conditions, but we are really encouraging the use of outdoor spaces. So for instance, today at 2 o'clock, the staff have got CPR to do. We're all gathering under the colas and outdoor spaces as we'll be together for that event. So we'll continue to do that at a school level as well. Masks are a really big part of the multi-layered strategy. So all school staff will be wearing masks. It's part of our requirements when we're in a space with somebody else. So right now, you can see on the phone here, Julie and I and Natalie, we're all in different spaces with nobody else, so we can have our masks off. But where we gather together, we need to have a mask on. Staff will have masks on when they're in the classroom. And the conditions around masks now are surgical masks, so well-fitted surgical masks. And part of that strategy is also around encouraging primary school age children to wear masks, and we will have supplies of those, and we would make that offer to the kids to wear a mask. We are asking that no vented or cloth masks be worn. The health advice has changed a little around that. We have got ample supplies here at school, so if at your place you've got a whole bundle of cloth masks and that's going to be a bit difficult to replace them at short notice, don't worry. We've got enough masks here to open up our own mask shop. We were doing just fine, and we can support you through that. Surgical masks are also strongly encouraged in outdoor settings where we can't physically distance. Now at Thornley West, I can't really see that being a big drama for us. We've got beautiful outdoor spaces, so that's probably unlikely to occur. Obviously, the kids take their masks off when eating, exercising, playing instruments, that sort of stuff. So lunchtime play would be a mask-free type activity. So would eating their lunch. So we've got some little pictures I'll show you in a minute about fitting a mask to a younger child. We were joking as a staff today that by the time we're 2 years into mask wearing, most of our children have worked this one out for themselves. But we do ask, if you've got a mask and a spare mask, please send them in. Let the kids know that it's quite appropriate to change your mask halfway through the day. But we do have plenty of them here to share as well. And you can see here up on the screen, if you haven't worked this one out, we've got some instructions about how to fit a mask to a younger child. So I'll leave that there for a moment, but I'm sure Google would answer those questions for you if you needed it. Visitors and activities is something that's really big for us to work through at the moment. And so until further notice, no visitors will be allowed on the grounds, except for some very small exceptions. And one of those exceptions is that 2 parents or carers can come in on the first day to drop their kindergarten students off. And it applies to year 7 as well in a high school setting. So we recognise that's a really important day. What's going to happen here? Friday is when our kindergarten students start, and we'll have a meeting space set up out front of the kindergarten classes so that 2 parents or carers can bring those children in. Obviously, they'll be, mum and dad will be wearing a mask. The handover will be done in front of the classroom, and then the kindergarten teachers will take the kids up into class. And just be a nice way to get them in. And for any interested kindergarten parents, in a minute I've got a slide about what happens in the afternoon, which will put you all in the loop. The only visitors on site are those who are fully vaccinated, workers or volunteers operating uniform shops and canteens, and that does apply to our school. visitors supporting school operations and curriculum delivery, and health partners. So in our school, we'll make it fairly quiet, I guess, in the schoolyard. It is worth pointing out, though, that the plan we're talking about at the moment runs for the first 4 weeks that students are here, and then I guess everything's up for grabs. At that point, we see how we're progressing. We have received some advice from the department on assessing high risk activities, and that's informing our planning about things like assemblies, how we manage sport, that sort of stuff. And we're also really having to think carefully about the USH in our school, which we'll get to in a moment. One of the things that's created a bit of a concern for schools in New South Wales are swimming carnivals that are scheduled to happen in the next few weeks. And in fact, our carnival had been scheduled for the 14th of February. Unfortunately, this year, we're only going to be able to take students along to that carnival who are setting a time for zones. So it's not really a case of going along for the fun and the activity and the experience and earning house points. But we are really hoping that next year we have a much different message. And that's been a fairly hard decision for all of our schools to make. But other than that, we think that most of our normal operations will continue in terms of school-based sport, etc. We will, of course, be maintaining our student cohorts throughout. So in order to minimise the spread, I guess this is what it's about. We need to reduce the interaction between the students. And just like in term 4, where we cohorted the kids and we had different ways into school and different ways out and split lunches and stuff, that will continue. That just means that should we be unfortunate and have COVID run through a class, perhaps we could contain it to a class rather than to the whole school. And we're trying to make sure that we can remain operational. But we do say, again, anyone experiencing even the mildest COVID symptoms would need to stay at home, even if you have a negative rapid antigen test. And I guess that's the advice is always, if you're sick, you need to be at home to recuperate. Okay. So all of the best practice hygiene initiatives that were brought in last year will continue. So the enhanced cleaning with still hand sanitizer, education around hand washing, etc. All of that just continues as it always has. The physical distancing continues. The QR code sign-in process continues. So even though in some areas of the community that's no longer required, a school it is still required. We will be cohorting the kids into stage groups, and staggered lunch and recess times will continue to support that. So in the afternoons here at school, this is almost the same plan that we had in term 4. So the Banksia students will come in into school between 8:30, 10 to 9. They will then finish at 3 p.m. and exit through the Banksia gate. Kindergarten in at 10 to 9. They'll go to the adventure playground for a bit of a play. They'll leave at 2:45 through the front main gate to Oakley Park. Year 1, we've got coming in at 8:40, out at 2:45 to the Banksia gate, and you can see it goes down the screen there. So all of those arrangements to help parents, we're going to send a push notification out on Tuesday, because it may be that you don't know which class your child is in, and you will note that year 2 is split across 2 different gates. So particularly for our year 2 parents, they'll need to know which gate and which time. And we'll be sending that out on Tuesday morning after we've got everyone into class and settled, so you'll know exactly where your kids will be. Of course, any questions, contact us and we'll point you in the right direction. Good news is that by Wednesday, we'll all be old hands at this and it's going to run smoothly. I have absolutely every confidence of that. Now, this is, I guess, some of the contingency planning. So the department obviously is watching the staffing situation very, very closely. We are hoping and confident that we'll be able to manage our staff absences. However, if face-to-face learning is not possible, we'll be supported to start home learning through digital learning packages for short periods. It's really important to understand that we're not talking about all of New South Wales education going home. What we're talking about is perhaps if we just can't cover enough classes, that we have to have a small group of students or perhaps the school out for a very short period of time. And that would be a decision that would be made in conjunction with, fairly senior officers in the department. So there's a whole pile of online digital packages to support learning. Today, one of the key tasks for us as a school is to become very familiar with that. We'll be orientating the students to that throughout the next few weeks as well. We will have ongoing support for home learning packages as required. If we needed to return to, if we had to go to learning from home, we would keep in contact with you using our push notifications, and the agenda would be to get everybody back to school as quick as is absolutely possible. And this is the sort of way that learning from home would work. This is the minimum expectation for delivering remote learning to reduce disruption for kids. So we'll be using existing programs and lessons into an online format in a student-centered way. And we do recognise that the learning needs of our students are wide and varied. The teachers are well placed to understand those, and they would be doing everything they could to make sure that every child has an approach to their learning that will meet their needs. We'll check in with the students. We'll make sure that regularly scheduled lessons are delivered live via video conference, via this sort of format, much as you would have seen in the past. Now, the idea behind that would be in an environment where the teachers are well and are able to deliver learning, but perhaps there's not enough staff to have the school open. So in other words, the teachers are still kind of at work, but they may not be physically here in the classrooms. The teacher's still involved, or a teacher is involved. Now, that might not be your child's individual teacher. It may be that on a given day you get lucky and I get to be your teacher, or somebody else does, but that would be that sort of model. Professional learning is being delivered throughout today and on Monday, so that teachers are well able to do that. And we're fairly well placed at Thornley West for that. We will continue to monitor attendance both online and offline, same approach as we had during the remote learning period last year. And what we'll be doing is we'll be supporting the community to make sure that there is appropriate internet access again, just like we did last year. So we're fairly well placed for that. Now, we don't have a preschool here, but we do have an Mush Service here. They have their own supply of rapid antigen tests that arrived yesterday, and they're working very much in line with the Department of Education's approach. So that's happening twice weekly down there. There is an Mush specific QR code that needs to be used for parents when they're dropping kids in and picking them up from Mush. What we would ask is that parents are very, very efficient at that process, because we can't have parents on site, and yet the Mush is in the centre of our school. It creates a little bit of a conundrum for us, and the best solution that I think is if everyone can just work together, get down there nice and quickly and do what you need to do, and then move on. That would be just fantastic. So we've got some advice for families. The links are here. It was also in the communication that went out last Monday, and you can of course click on those, and that will help keep you in the loop if you look at that communication that went out for us. So I guess the overall message from us here at school is our number one priority is to make sure that learning remains on site wherever possible. I would also like to make sure that the students are safe, the students are well, and that everything is predictable for everybody. I understand that sometimes the communication comes out a little bit short, but as you would also appreciate, sometimes something comes from the Premier through education and out the other side. We will continue to work with you on that. So this meeting will be recorded. I know that Nicole and Julie are working in the background on the chat. I'm just going to have a little bit of a chat then to see if there's anything in there that I can ask. Okay, so So one question here, which is really topical actually, it's come from Victoria. I don't think I met Victoria yet. She's asking around support unit. Now that's a really interesting conversation. You heard me say earlier on that we'd sent home 10 rapid antigen tests for the support unit students. The Premier had explained that to us as being very conscious of the different proximity that students in some support classes spend a lot of their day. So we have, obviously there is sister school transport buses, and some of those sort of approaches do change the way that the cohorting, the physical distance would work. So this is an opportunity to make sure that everyone's is super safe and to keep everything functioning as best as possible. But of course, it really does need to be remembered that the testing system is recommended, but it's not mandatory. And if a parent decides that they would prefer to test 2 times a week or 4 times a week, that would be absolutely fine, and a parental decision would be made for that. So I'm just having a look here. We've got a question here from Fiona, wondering what learning from home looks like for children who have to isolate, but school is continuing face-to-face. All right, Fiona. I can see Julie's typing an answer in there. So the answer to that is where the working from home packs come into play. And that's why they're there. They're well developed. There's a pack for every grade. It's set out over a number of weeks, and we'll be orientating the students to those packs so that if they ended up in that situation, they would in fact be at home. Okay. So, another question from Debbie. If we go into isolation because of a case in our family, then that goes on for a few weeks because of others becoming positive. Will there be any work provided for those children at home? I think it's the same answer. The learning from home packs are our go-to resource for that. And but of course, what we would encourage everybody to do is to keep in contact with us as much as possible. And we would keep in contact with that. So that probably winds up most of our COVID-related questions. We'll continue to monitor the chat and address as many questions as we can for the next little spell. But if anyone's got anything that's specific, the office knows most of the information, and we look forward to seeing you next week. We do thank you for the support we've had around the handing out of tests, and the end of the day, we all want to be at school, so we're in the same boat. So do enjoy the last few days of your holidays. Good luck with your rapid antigen testing. I did mine last night and I survived just fine. I hope you do as well. See you later, everybody.